What's up everyone, John Velasco with PhoneArena. Right now I'm doing an in-depth video review of the Samsung Infuse 4G. It's going to be an upcoming device for AT&T's lineup. It's going to cost $200 on contract starting on May 15th, and it's going to compete head-on with devices like the HTC Inspire 4G and even the Motorola ATRIX 4G, which has stood at the top of AT&T's lineup so far that we've checked out. The unique thing about this handset, it has a very streamlined approach to it. One of the thinnest smartphones out there in the market, measuring at 0.35 inches thick or 8.9 millimeters. On top of that, you have a very large size, 4.5 inch Super AMOLED Plus display, and of course it's stated as having HSUPA support enabled at launch time. So let's check it out, and hopefully it does live up to the expectations. For starters, the first thing that really captures our attention about the Samsung Infuse 4G is its large size. It's definitely one of the more wider looking devices on the market out there. But thankfully though, it doesn't feel as bulky or doesn't even look as bulky compared to other devices of its caliber like the HTC Thunderbolt. Now the reason why is because Samsung has really streamlined the handset. It measures in at 0.35 inches thick or 8.9 millimeters thick. You can tell there's just a bump towards the bottom edge here, and it's a bottom heavy device, so it feels quite natural to hold, a little bit on the wider side, but still the unique thing about it is that it's extremely lightweight. You barely feel the handset in your hand. That's the other amazing thing about it. Its choice of materials is pretty good despite being all plastic. It has this gunmetal like finish around the handset, and the back has this pattern design. It's not soft touch, it's a hard plastic. It just gives it a little bit of personality. Overall, the design approach is straightforward, some hard lines, some rounded corners, pretty much a straightforward handset, and does feel solidly built all around. Obviously, one of the other highlights about the handset is its gorgeous 4.5-inch WVGA Super AMOLED Plus display. So that's 480 by 800 pixels. And for most things, it's pretty easy to read, a good amount of detail, pretty sharp. But when you do web browsing, you kind of sense that its pixel density is kind of lacking. It makes it a little bit harder to read out the finest of text here, but nonetheless, it's still pretty easy. The other thing about it just has some rich-looking colors, very saturated, and definitely makes everything stand out and pop. It's one of the more alluring things about the handset. On top of that, it sports some really nice viewing angles, so no matter what angle you look at it, you'll still be able to have lots of visibility with it. And in outdoor conditions, we didn't have a problem using it. Since they're positioned close towards the edges, we still find ourselves accidentally pressing the capacitive Android buttons beneath the display. Meanwhile, on the top, you have the 1.3 megapixel front-facing camera for video chats and self-portraits, and you also have the light and proximity sensors up there as well. On the left edge, you have the raised and separated volume rocker. It's quite distinguishable to the finger, and on top of that, they exhibit a good amount of response when you press it down. While on the right edge, the only thing you'll find is just the dedicated power button, which is raised and has a really nice tactile response to it. At the top edge, you have the 3.5mm headset jack, one of the other microphones, while at the bottom, you have the micro USB port for data and charging. You have also the other microphone as well. Finally, in the back, you have the 8-megapixel autofocus camera with the LED flash. You have the notches here for the speakerphone. Removing the back cover is pretty easy. Just remove it, and it's just a flimsy plastic cover and gives you access to the battery, the SIM card slot, and the micro SD card slot. It's hidden beneath the SIM card slot, so you need to remove the battery. It's a 2GB card preloaded in there, and there's additional 14GB internal, total of 16GB. As much as we'd like to see the handset be graced with some sort of dual-core processor to make it compete with some of the more contemporary devices out there, instead Samsung decided to put in a 1.2 GHz single-core Hummingbird processor, which is a slight step up in terms of clock speed over the Samsung Galaxy S devices out there. Still though, it does a good job as far as being responsive. You can tell by navigating across the home screen with the live wallpaper, it's running pretty good. And for most basic operations, from kinetic scrolling to opening up applications and even multitasking, it gets the job done. We did run a couple of different benchmark tests, and it didn't put up some great numbers, but nonetheless, you got to overlook that and just see it for yourself. The platform experience is still pretty good either way. Being a Samsung smartphone at all, we're treated to a tried and true TouchWiz interface running on top of Android 2.2 Froyo. There's a lot of personalization aspects with it, of course, such as using different wallpapers, either static or dynamic ones, even a host of widgets to beautify the home screens. You have things like the social updates widgets, which aggregates all your social networking accounts into one place. You can even set a status message, even upload photos to your respective accounts. You have other things like the dual clock widget, which gives you the world time, and you even have the days widget, which acts as a mini diary for you. On top of that, you have all the usual set of Android widgets to really give it a personalized look. Thanks to its massive 4.5-inch display, typing out messages no problem at all, just because there's plenty of room for the buttons with the on-screen keyboards. On top of that, they exhibit a really good responsive feel, so for the speedy texters out there, it's more than usable. On top of that, you have a variety of different input methods. You have the Samsung keyboard, you have the stock Android keyboard, and of course you also have the swipe keyboard for an alternative way of inputting text. And of course, the landscape option presents you with the most amount of space, and we find it very easy to use. Fittingly, the Gmail experience is fantastic with the Infuse 4G, just because like any other high-end handset out there in the market, it has a rich amount of features, such as threaded conversations, labeling, and even the ability to add multiple Gmail accounts. As far as setting up other email clients, it's pretty simple. Generally, it'll ask you for your email address and password. 9-10 times it automatically will set up. One of the other highlights about the Samsung Infuse 4G is the fact that it is an HSPA Plus enabled device, and it's also mentioned as having support for HSUPA at launch, but prior to launch, like right now, we did run a couple of speed tests, and unfortunately, it doesn't give you those 4G-like speeds that it's touting. Instead, it feels a little bit more on the 3G side. Still though, pages load up pretty good amount of time. You have support for Flash, so you get that desktop-like experience. On pages like a Yahoo, it runs pretty quick. You can tell kinetic scrolling is pretty good. Just because of the size of the display and also the resolution, pixel density might not be the best, so you might have a little bit of hard time reading out even the tiniest of text, but zooming in it's not a problem. However though, when you move on to pages that are heavy with Flash content, it just comes to a crawl like our website. When it does encounter some Flash content, it just seems to be struggling as far as just scrolling. As you can tell, it just has a very choppy look to it and does hinder the overall performance. Employs some eye-catching visuals with its music player. The presentation is very nice indeed. You have, when you're playing a song, it displays your usual set of information. On top of that, you have even stuff like having a visualization on there. It gives you a bar equalizer as it's playing a song. On top of that, you have disc view, which gives you this 3D-like carousel effect when you're browsing through your music. It has a really nice presentation, as we mentioned already. As far as the audio quality, it's pretty good actually. It has a good amount of volume to it, pretty punchy in its tone. We set the equalizer setting to automatic so it doesn't feel strained or crackling at the loudest volume setting. Thanks to its gorgeous looking Super AMOLED panel and its large size, the video watching experience is phenomenal to say the least. We have a video here encoded in a DivX 1280 by 720 resolution, plenty of nice looking colors, juicy, it moves at a nice frame rate, no slowdown or lag, a lot of crisp looking visuals, and overall the video watching experience is definitely up there. Image quality with the handset's 8-megapixel autofocus camera is more than passable. In outdoor conditions, good lighting, it does present us with a good amount of detail, but it does look a little bit on the overexposed side, and color production is a little bit on the cooler side. Indoors, under natural lighting, the colors might look a little bit distorted, and for areas where there's barely any lighting, there's a little bit of a noise evident in the shot, but not that much. And on top of that, the LED flash does a great job in illuminating the scenery. It's still able to produce some nice looking colors. Able to shoot 720p videos, we're happy with the overall results with the handset. It shoots at a consistent frame rate of 29 frames per second, so it's pretty fluid in its movement. On top of that, there's a good amount of detail with the shots, and it doesn't seem overly sensitive in terms of exposure, so it has a good balance in that area. Audio recording is also crystal clear and distortion free. And the other great thing about the handset is that it has continuous autofocus, so it'll automatically adjust to keep things looking sharp and clear. Calling quality of the handset's pretty good. There's no distortion or any background noise on either end of the line, so that's pretty good. The earpiece, though, it might not be the strongest out there, but voices do have a hollowness to them. On the other end of the line, our callers did say our voice was clear and distinct, so no problem on their end. As far as using the speakerphone, though, it's not as strong as we'd like, and voices still have that somewhat hollow tone to them, but it's still clear and there's no distortion in the background. Signal strength is rather good with the Samsung Infuse 4G. In high coverage areas, we get roughly 4 to 5 bars and good coverage. It rarely ever fluctuates in signal strength, and we didn't experience any drop calls during our testing. Battery life seems to be a little bit lax with the Samsung Infuse 4G just because after fully charging it, we managed to get approximately 15 hours of normal usage before it required another charge. It consisted mostly of web browsing, text messaging, emailing, and occasional phone calls. So for normal users, you'll get roughly 15 hours of mixed usage. For heavy users, you want to bring a spare charger on hand to constantly charge it. And for light users, you might edge out close to a day. So it's hard to say where the Samsung Infuse 4G falls into place when you compare it to some of the top-tier devices on AT&T's lineup, like the Motorola ATRIX 4G. There are some things going for it and some other things that aren't. First of all, we love its design. It's definitely a streamlined device, super lightweight, and just a marvel to say the least at the design of it. One of the thinnest devices on the market. On top of that, you have the gorgeous-looking Super AMOLED Plus display. It's definitely one of the highlights. You get some nice-looking colors and definitely catches your attention at first glance. But some other things that we don't like about it is the fact that it resorts to using the single core processor, unlike some of its contemporaries out there. They use dual core processors, which make it a little bit more eye-catching to people out there. On top of that, the HSPA Plus speeds that we checked out weren't that great, but hopefully at launch it's going to improve, or maybe it might be a software update that really bumps it up a little bit more. Aside from that, it's still pretty good, well-rounded platform experience. We hopefully will get gingerbread down the road, but for $200 on contract, you really can't beat this offering. So if you'd like to learn more about the Samsung Infuse 4G, or for all latest cell phone reviews, news, specs, and information, you can check us out, PhoneArena.com.